All right, welcome to our 12:30 session. We have Bill Eckberg speaking on first coin made under the U.S. Constitution. I'm really looking forward to this. He's got some new information on the Judd-6 Birch cent that has not been seen before. So, and I haven't seen all of it either, so I'm excited to see this. Bill is a longtime researcher in early copper and other coinage period. And with that, Bill, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Len, and hello to all of you that are there. I'm really quite excited to be able to present this. This is an extremely important coin, which is very, very poorly understood. It is the first coin that was struck for the U.S. under the Constitution. There are other coins that can claim to be the first American coin, the Dudley patterns of 1783, the Fujio cent, but those were made under the Articles of Confederation. They were made before we had the current government that we have. And so the first one that was made, or we believe the first one that was made, is the Judd-6, and I'm going to present that. But first, let's get a little background. The first Mint Act, July 6, 1786, was a congressional resolution. This was under the Articles of Confederation, that the money unit of the United States of America be $1. And that was the Spanish dollar. It was pegged to the Spanish dollar from the beginning. They assayed Spanish dollars and made sure that the American dollars were of exactly the same metal content as Spanish dollars. So what you learned that the US dollars were deficient in silver, and so they were gotten rid of, was simply not true. They were equal in all respects to the Spanish dollars. And the smallest coin would be of copper, of which 200 shall pass for $1. So the smallest coin is going to be a half cent. Half cents, as some of you know, are near and dear to my heart. And the several pieces shall increase in a decimal ratio. This was something that was definitely against what people were used to. They were used to pounds, shillings, and pence. But the French decimal ratio was adopted, fortunately, and we still use it today. The Real Mint Act came about April 2nd, 1792, and there were two versions, and it's worth talking about both of them at least a little bit. The Senate version said that an effigy of the president with his first initial and last name, the succession of his presidency, and the date should be on the obverse. And this is what those would have looked like. This is a Washington cent by Peter Getz. It says G. Washington, President 1, 1792. This was a pattern. We don't know exactly when it was made, but it was made early. There are reports that George Washington objected to his face and name being on the coins. There is absolutely no evidence that he did. There's certainly no evidence that he did so publicly. And I think if he had even privately intimated to members of Congress, things would have gone a little bit differently in the Mint Act than they did. But this is an example of what our coins might have looked like if the Senate version had stayed. House of Representatives changed it so that upon one side of each of the said coins there shall be an impression emblematic of liberty with an inscription of the word liberty and the year of the coinage. This is a very unique new thing. Kings and emperors had always been on the money, and the United States didn't have a king or an emperor. And the idea was that we were a nation of laws, not of men, and we were a nation of the Enlightenment. And I think that was very important. And this came about in the House of Representatives. Upon the reverse of each of the gold and silver coins there shall be the figure or representation of an eagle with this inscription, United States of America. And upon the reverse of each of the copper coins, there shall be an inscription which shall express the denomination of the piece, namely cent or half cent, as the case may require. There was initially no denomination put on the gold and silver coins because they had their value based on their weight. The cent and the half cent were never legal tender until Nixon was president, actually. So the denominations were put on those. Interestingly, this passed by only 3 votes in the House of Representatives. Only 3 votes. Otherwise, we would have had an effigy of the president, and it would be still going on today. 3 votes. Imagine how close that was. And again, I said, if Washington had really objected, he would have told somebody, and the House of Representatives version would have probably passed unanimously, because people would have done whatever Washington said at that time. Okay, an impression emblematic of liberty. What did liberty mean to Americans in the early 1790s? We think immediately of Patrick Henry saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." Freedom from England, well, that war was over. The war for independence was over. Freedom from slavery? Yeah, no, they weren't trying to get rid of slavery at that point. Excuse me. So what were they talking about in terms of freedom? Well, liberty meant freedom from external restraint. In other words, the right to do what you wanted to do or what you thought was best. Freedom from external restraint. And then the question is, what would an emblem of liberty look like? What would an emblem of liberty look like? Nowadays, the emblem of liberty on our coins is a dead president. But back in 1790s, that was not the case. Turns out there were 2 French models for what liberty would look like, and here they are both shown. On the left is the Libertas Americana, which was designed by Benjamin Franklin and engraved by Dupré at the Paris Mint to honor the American victories at Saratoga and Yorktown during the Revolutionary War. On the right, you see Liberté Françoise. At the bottom, it says L'an premier de la Révolution Française by Gall. That means it was the first year of the French Republic, of the not revolution, but Republic of France. And this coin was dated 1792, so it may not have been the inspiration for the American coins, but the Libertas Americana certainly was, and they're very, very similar. We see a female form with long hair blowing in the wind in both cases, a liberty cap and a pole over Liberty's right shoulder. The thing that I think is weird about these, and I love these 2 coins, the thing that I think is weird about them is that Liberty's hair in neither case actually seems to grow out of the back of her head. It really seems to grow out of her neck. And of course, anatomy doesn't work that way. But that strangeness seemed to carry over to the earliest American coins as well, which we will talk about. Well, the Mint's physical facilities. April 14th of 1792, just a couple of weeks after the Mint Act passes, Washington appoints David Rittenhouse as director, followed by Tristram Dalton as treasurer and Henry Voigt as chief coiner pro tem. Here's a painting by Charles Wilson Peale of David Rittenhouse, a very famous picture of him. You see this in many, many, many books about early coins. This you don't see so often. This is a painting of Tristram Dalton by Jonathan Trumbull, who was the second best portrait painter in the United States at the time. If you're not familiar with Trumbull's work, he's the one who painted the huge mural canvas that's in the rotunda of the Capitol about the Declaration of Independence being presented to Congress. So Trumbull presumably painted this from life, so this is probably what Tristram Dalton really looked like. And it may be the only painting out there that shows what Dalton really looked like. And here's the only known painting of Henry Voigt. Alas, there is no painting of Henry Voigt. We have no idea what he looked like. He was an incredibly important person in the mint because he was the guy who oversaw the construction of the mint. He oversaw the minting of coins. And in 1793, he actually engraved and designed the coins until Robert Scott was hired. So, June 17, Rittenhouse buys a house at 37 and 39 7th Street in Philadelphia with outbuildings, and the outbuildings were a still house and a horse mill. This famous painting of Ye Olde Mint, an original watercolor by Edwin Lamassoure Jr., was commissioned long after this mint had closed. But you can see what it looked like on the front, at least. Two townhouses attached to one another with what looks like 3 doors. The one in the middle is not a door, it's an alleyway that leads to the courtyard out back. And 2 other buildings in the back that were actually built by the government to replace the still house and the horse mill. This is a famous bucolic scene. Looks like the mint is all by itself. Trees around, sidewalks, grass, beautiful suburban view. It's like it's in a park. Well, it wasn't. It was actually in the middle of a block with houses on either side. And this is a painting by Pete Smith, Philadelphia Street Scene, 1809. And what this shows is what the mint really looked like. It was stuck between 2 other buildings. And you can see it's 3 stories. And if you look in the lower left, there is a guy in the window with balances, and he would be the assayer, who was Joseph Richardson at that point. And above that, on the left, you see the engraver, who was Robert Scott. And in the upper right window, there's somebody looking out, and it's unclear who that might be. It could be Henry Voigt or someone from his family, because they lived in the mint for some time. And here's a back view of what it really looked like. It was in the middle of a very busy section of town. The 2 buildings of the mint that face the street are on the far right of the picture. The 2 new buildings are in the middle, and it's all surrounded by alleys and other buildings. It was by no means a bucolic view like people have generally thought. This, again, is another painting by Pete Smith. So, after buying the house, or the mint, Voigt hires employees to renovate and build mint buildings. The townhouses were not intended to be a mint. They were places for people to live, so a lot of renovation was needed. The first thing they did, in fact, was tear down the still house and build a new building. The first coinage press was installed September 25th. So they did not coin anything at the mint until at least September 25th. Pattern cents and dimes, or deems, or dismies, whichever pronunciation you prefer, were coined beginning in mid to late December. So nothing was coined at the mint until mid to late December. Well, this brings us to the first coin. This is the coin that this talk is about. It's Judd-6 Birch cent. We see an emblem of liberty with somewhat disheveled looking hair. The inscription is "Liberty, parent of science and industry." The date on the obverse. The reverse says United States of America. It says 1 cent like it's supposed to. And at the bottom, GWPT, George Washington President. People have taken this to mean that this must have been struck before the Mint Act. It may have been struck before the Mint Act, but I don't think GWPT means it had to be, because the Mint Act did not say that nothing could be said about the president. It just didn't require that the president be identified. So a little different thing. Let's take a look at Liberty. If you have a large enough screen, you can probably see that this picture is made up of little tiny halftone dots. It's a black and white image from the Bowers and Merena Garrett catalog in 1981, because that's the last time this coin was seen publicly. And this is from the best image that was available. And if you look at pictures of this coin in books and articles, this is what you see, this photograph. If you look at Liberty's hair, particularly on the top of her head, it's impossible to see what the hair looks like. It just looks like a jumbled mess. If you look down at her neck, again, it looks like most of her hair is coming from her neck, not from the back of her head. She has a rather bulbous looking bust. And in her neck, you see what people have always called a necklace. I've never actually worn a necklace like that, nor have I ever seen anybody wear a necklace like that, because necklaces hang down at the bottom of the throat. If that actually was supposed to be something worn, which you'll see it's not, it would have been a choker. So people that write about this as a necklace don't understand necklaces. Let's move ahead. The necklace has been so ingrained into the lore of this coin that this is a Gallery Mint museum reproduction of the Judd-6, and you can see that the necklace is engraved to look like a real choker. And if you look at the hair on the top, you can see that the engraver just sort of punted on what the hair looked like at the top, because you just can't tell from the photograph what the hair looked like. But if you look at the individual strands of hair sticking out, you can see that he made every effort to make this look as accurate as possible. So this is what the coin really looks like. The owner of this coin made it available to Kevin Vinton of Stax Bowers for photography, and they provided these photographs to me. This is what the coin really looks like in color. It's struck in white metal. There are some dark areas, particularly on the reverse, which we'll talk about in a moment. But again, you can see Liberty, parent of science and industry, surrounded by a circle of dots. The date, Miss Liberty, her hair looks much more clear in this. You can still see those marks that make up the so-called necklace. And if you look between the R of industry and the back of her head, you can see a small planchet lamination. If you look at the reverse, there are several substantial planchet laminations. You can see one hanging down from the second S of states, one hanging down from the O of, another one hanging down from the N of cent, and a big dark one hanging down from the T of cent, and also a void above the second S in states. This is made in, as I said, white metal, which is very, very soft. And when this coin was struck, I don't think they necessarily went to much effort to make a really good planchet of it. They simply took a blob of white metal and hammered the dies into it until the image of the coin came up on both sides. The reason that you don't see the dot pattern all the way around is that they trimmed the excess metal off of this thing. If you look at the edge, you can actually see knife marks where they cut this thing down to make it look like it does. The reverse, as you can see, has a second circle of dots surrounding 1 cent, and some vegetation above and below the words 1 cent. There's a very sort of primitive looking wreath. It's kind of hard to tell what kind of leaves those might be. And the bow at the bottom is a double bow, but it's really, really tiny. Again, this was an essay. The purpose of this coin was to make an essay to see what the dies would look like. Here's a close-up of the so-called necklace, and I think you can see very clearly that these are not intended to be there. These are little tiny scratches. This is a coin that is made in extremely soft metal, and it wouldn't have taken much to scratch it. You can see that the little scratches actually extend into the field in front of the face. There's 3 or 4 additional scratches in front. And this is a close-up of what the hair really looked like. You can see that her hair is curly up at the top, not straight, not wavy, but definitely curly at the top. So what was really there is not what people have thought was there for the last 40 years. And here's a picture of that void up at the S of States. You can see that it's actually a big fissure in the planchet. Most people have called that simply a dark spot, but it's actually a hole in the coin, because this was not made from a fabulous planchet that they intended to use. This coin was found in England in 1888. So it was made in 1792. Nobody knows where it was or what happened to it until 1888. It was so its first 96 years of history are completely unknown. But somebody took really good care of it, because this coin is extremely lustrous. You can't really see that in the pictures. I've seen other pictures that show the luster better. It's a very, very lustrous piece. It's in beautiful condition, so it was lovingly maintained from 1792 until the present. Beautiful, beautiful condition coin. The other first coin is this, a half dime or half dime or half dismy, whichever you prefer. Notice that the inscription again is Liberty, Parent of Science and Industry, although you don't have as much room, so they abbreviated Liberty and Parent. And on the reverse, Uni States of America, not United. But there's an eagle, if you want to call it an eagle. It looks, well, it doesn't resemble any real eagle. Eagles don't have a long neck like that. They simply don't look anything like that. But we'll give the engraver a pass, as he probably had never seen an eagle. We'll talk about who the engraver was. There's a second version of Birch cent on the right. These were struck in copper, and they have 3 different edges. 2 of them are to be esteemed be useful, and the third one is plain. So they struck them with 3 different edge designs. But Liberty, Parent of Science and Industry is still there. 1792 is still there. Liberty looks a little different. Her face looks about the same. Her hair is very, very different. It doesn't all seem to come out of her neck. It seems to come out of the back of her head. Her bust is a little different. Mostly the hair is different. So the question is, were these struck from the same die or from different dies? And the best way to tell that I know of is to do overlays. And you take one of the coins and you put it into one color channel, and you put the other one into another color channel, and you overlay them. Oh, wait a minute, before I get to that. It's called the Birch cent because the copper versions, the second versions, have the word birch on the truncation of the neck. And you can see that here. Okay, here are the overlays. Notice that Liberty, Parent of Science and Industry, and the date match exactly. Exactly. And that means that these coins have to have been struck from the same die, because the mint did not have the technology that would have allowed it to duplicate the lettering anywhere near as perfectly as this. So these two coins were struck from the same die. The hair is quite different. You can see the green, which is the original version, the magenta, which is the newer version. You can see that the hairline has been moved. You can see the ear has been moved a little bit. So there was quite a bit of re-engraving done for Liberty. But the face is the same and the die is the same. So, and this is not a new finding for me. This was reported by other people. There was in fact a very substantial publication in the Numismatist back in 1982 by Carl W.A. Carlson, in which he talked about these being struck from the same die. I've enlarged some areas here. The blue arrow points to hair that was in the original version that's not in the later version. If you look down towards the bottom of that, you can see the ear is a little different. The red arrows refer to things that are stronger in the second version than the first, but the eye is in the same place. If you look on the right side, you see that the position of the bust has been slightly changed, and the position of the neck has been slightly changed. But otherwise, these are from the same die. So here are the birch cent and the half dime, the birch cent and the half dime. Once again, this is relative sizes, relative colors. The images on the half dime and birch cent look a lot alike. If you flip the half dime, you can see that at the very minimum, the family resemblance between the two figures. This has been recognized for a very long time. This is not a new finding for me. But if you do an overlay, you make the heads the same size so that you do an overlay, you can see that everything is pretty much exactly the same. These two were done from the same drawing. The half dime and the birch cent were made from the same drawing. They were by the same person, engraved as close to exactly the same as a human being could do. So we'll attribute the half dime to Birch as well. Now, let's talk about the inscriptions. Liberty, parent of science and industry. Liberty, parent of science and industry. Well, we've already talked about liberty a little bit. It didn't mean give me liberty or give me death. Parent, well, I think most of us probably know what a parent is. How about science? How about the word science? Well, I spent 40 years as a professional scientist. I worked in the lab, I did research, I published articles. But that wasn't what science meant in 1792. Science was something different. And how about industry? Well, I've driven around the country and I've seen factories, I've seen refineries, I've seen places where industry takes place. But those didn't exist in 1792 either. So what did this motto mean? Liberty, parent of science and industry. So liberty, freedom from restraint, not civil liberty, freedom from restraint. Personal freedom, in other words. A parent, one who teaches, nurtures, or encourages. Someone who teaches, nurtures, or encourages. So freedom from restraint nurtures or encourages science, which at that time meant knowledge, learnedness, and expertise. It didn't have anything to do with laboratory work. knowledge, learnedness, and expertise. And industry at the time meant diligence and attention to business. So the inscription means freedom from restraint, nurtures or encourages learnedness and diligence. This is not the way people generally think of those inscriptions. On the copper cent, as I said, the edge reads "to be esteemed, be useful." I don't have a picture of that, but you can trust me on it. All of these refer to individual moral virtues, individual moral virtues. Well, why would we be putting moral virtues on our coins? To some extent, we have this gentleman to thank. This is Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was not living anymore in 1792. He had died in 1790. But he did leave behind a recommendation for what should be on some earlier coins. He said, "Put on one side some important proverb of Solomon, some pious moral, prudential, or economical precept, the frequent inculcation of which, by seeing it every time one receives a piece of money, might make an impression upon the mind, especially of young persons, and tend to regulate the conduct." So in other words, Franklin was recommending mottos on the coins that would enlighten people, make an impression, and give advice. And so I think that's the general background that led to those inscriptions. So here they are again. See them in their real light rather than in the light of the 21st century. Liberty, parent of science and industry. Those inscriptions appeared on all of the 1792 pattern coins. On the left, we have a silver center cent. If you start reading at 12 o'clock and go clockwise, Liberty, parent of science and indust, they ran out of space. And if you look at the dime or deem or disme, Liberty starts at 6:30, parent of science and indus. We don't know who made the silver center cent. We really don't. It doesn't appear to be the work of anybody that did anything else at the mint. We do know that the dime or deem or disme was the product of Henry Voigt. And we know that because he used the same punch that he used to create the head of this dime to make the 1793 half cent. So these two coins, by the way, are the same size as a half cent of the 1790s. So Liberty, parent of science and industry, made it on all of the pattern coins of 1792. Interestingly, did not make it on any other coins after 1792. So let's talk about the reverses a little bit more. United States of America, GWPT, 1 cent, a wreath, circle of dots outside the inscription, and a circle of dots inside the wreath surrounding 1 cent. If we look at the version that was struck in copper, we have the same inscriptions, 1 cent, United States of America. Instead of GWPT, we have the fraction 1/100th, meaning 1/100th of a dollar. Instead of the circle of dots, we have a simple scribed ring, scribed circle. And the leaves and the wreath are really completely different in the second version than they are in the first. The bow is also very different. It's much larger. It's got long ribbon ends. The berries are in long strings, and the berries are very tiny. The leaves are obviously made from punches because there are several leaves in there that are identical. We don't need to go into that here, but the wreath very much resembles the wreath on the wreath cent and the 1793 half cent of the next year. So we believe that the this was made by the same person, or this second reverse was made by the same person who made the wreath cent and the half cent, which would again be Henry Voigt. The Birch cent, however, reverse, the one on the left, was presumably made by the same person that made the obverse, which would be Mr. Birch. We'll get to his identity in a moment. Carlson said that in his big article, he said that this second reverse was simply a re-engraving of the first reverse. This overlay shows that that's not possible. I aligned them so that the word "of" matched on the two. You can see that absolutely nothing else matches. None of the other lettering matches. The positioning of the circles around 1 cent, pretty close. The wreaths are completely different. 1 cent is different. So the conclusion has to be that the second reverse of the Birch cents was a new die. It was not made from the same die that that Birch engraved for the Judd-6. When were they made? Well, the GWPT variety is believed to have been made before April 2, before there was a mint building. And the reason for that, as I mentioned earlier, is that before April 2, before the Mint Act was passed, the possibility was that the president's name would be on the coins. However, the Mint Act did not specify that the president could not be identified on the coin. So this might have been made before April 2. It might have been made after April 2. We simply can't be certain. But it's certainly the first coin that was produced. We know that half dimes or half deems or half dismies were first struck for Thomas Jefferson on July 13th, and that is before there was a coinage press at the Mint. They were struck for Thomas Jefferson on July 13th. We know because that's the day, or the day before he picked them up and took them with him when he returned to Mount Vernon and started spending them on the way. We know that these were both struck at a John Harper's nearby saw factory that was about 2 blocks from the Mint. Why would they be struck at a saw factory? Well, John Harper, in addition to machines that made saws, also had a coinage press, and he may have been the guy that coined that pattern that looks like a Washington cent that we showed at the beginning. So he had a coinage press. These were struck at his factory, presumably in the cellar, although the cellar might have been at ground level. I don't know that in Philadelphia in the 1790s it was a good idea to dig a basement, because Philadelphia is at sea level. Cents with Birch on the neck and 1/100th on the reverse were struck after December 18th, 1792, maybe even early in 1793 at the New Mint building. We know this because on December 18th, Thomas Jefferson wrote to President Washington that they had struck the silver center cents and that they were going to be striking the new real cent, which would be the large version, the Birch cent, but they hadn't done it yet on December 18th. So finally, who was Birch? Who was this guy? And the answer is that nobody knows for sure. Nobody really knows for sure. There is no record of anyone by that name doing any engraving for the Mint ever. He may have done this on his own, in other words. There was, however, an engraver named Robert or Bob Birch, who worked at the shops of Henry Voigt and John Harper in 1788. Henry Voigt, as you know, became the the chief coiner, John Harper, was the guy in whose shop these coins were made. So it is entirely possible that this Robert Birch, or Bob Birch if you prefer, is the guy who created these coins. And I will say that lacking any other reasonable alternatives, we'll say that Robert Birch was our guy. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and please ask any questions you like.
All right, thanks a lot. I expect to get a lot of questions here, but please enter those in the chat. I guess I'm still not completely clear on the timing of the Judd-6, the GWPT sent.
Yeah, I'm just saying we don't know. Everybody thinks it must have been struck before the Mint Act passed, because the Senate version of the Mint Act said that it should identify the president. But the real version of the Mint Act that was finally passed and signed into law doesn't mention anything about the president. So it's not forbidden to put the president's name there. It's just not specified that they had to.
Yeah.
A lot of times in the world of business, you can do anything that you're not forbidden from doing. Okay. And so parent of science and industry, it doesn't say that has to be there, but it's not forbidden. So it was there.
Yeah, so they kind of could have been made anytime during 1792. I think typically we've sort of thought that they were made about the same time as the signed Birch cents, the Judd 1, 2, and 3. Oh, sorry, Judd
3, 4, and 5.
But
yeah, most people think it was sooner than that, simply because the changes are so substantial, and the entire new reverse die. I think it pretty much had to be earlier than that, and it's certainly always traditionally been considered to be the very first coin struck for the mint.
The other interesting thing is that the white metal one is not signed, and the copper ones are.
Correct.
So
the white metal one was not a finished version.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, to go from the white metal version, from the Judd-6 to the copper versions, the die had to be substantially modified in the hair. They had to scrape out all of the hair, burnish it smooth, and then re-engrave new hair. This was not a trivial matter to do, but a lot of work had to go into changing from what we see in the Judd-6 to what we see in the other Birch cents. This was a lot of work involved to make that change.
All right, and then just one other note on Bob Birch. Chris McDowell had an article a couple of years ago that found him associated with some of the other coiners.
Yes, and that's where I got that information from.
Can't remember the exact year on that, but anyway, okay. So let's dig into the questions. First one: if the 1786 Act referred to decimal progressions, that predates the French adoption of decimals by a few years. I understand the U.S. was second only to Russia in introducing decimal coinage, and France third.
Good point. Thank you.
Yeah, offhand, I'm not exactly sure when Russia introduced decimal coinage, so that's an interesting point.
I'm not either, but yes, that's an interesting point.
All right, next question. If the Libertas Americana design raises an interesting question. Did the image with the Liberty cap influence later French coinage rather than the other way around? Or were these produced retrospectively based on the French model? They're too similar to be coincidental.
Well, the Libertas Americana dates to 1783, so it's well before any U.S. coin. And they were made, Franklin had them made for people in the United States. So they were very familiar. They were given to congressmen. They were given to other officials, other important people. So they would have been a very familiar thing to people at the higher echelons of society in the 1790s. So yes, I think it has to be considered, if not a model for the American coinage, at least an inspiration for the American coinage.
Yeah, Franklin did a really good job of getting that into the hands of important people, and
He did.
the correspondence surviving from that is legion. I mean, there's just tons of
Yes.
letters of acknowledgement to Franklin for these
Yep.
these medals, and you know, you certainly don't see that with you know, half dimes or U.S. coins.
Right.
All right, next question. Is there any explanation for the odd looking bulbous bust area? I haven't seen that on any other coin, and it certainly doesn't look natural.
Yes, it doesn't look natural. I agree completely. You want me to try and bring that back? I can try to do that.
And I guess one point I would make while Bill's doing that is that yeah, we did not have the best engravers in the United States in the 1790s. They were all over in Europe. So
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, we didn't have an engraver at the mint until the end of 1793. Some people dispute that fact, but the mint records show that the first engraver was hired in November of 1793, and then congressional reports say that until that time, the chief coiner was obliged to make the dies for himself. So there's no question that Henry Voigt did the original dies of 1793. But yes, that bulbous bust is very, very bizarre. Why it was made like that, I don't know. When the die was re-engraved to make the copper versions, it was made a little less bulbous. So the engraver was obviously not satisfied with the way the bust looked initially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It's a little weird.
Yeah, and combining the chief coiner and engraver responsibility, I think, was a bit of cost cutting on the part of Congress, and there were just very few people.
That was the point. Yeah, they wanted to hire one person to take both jobs at the lower salary.
Yeah.
So they were going to save $1,500 a year by doing that.
Yeah.
And they couldn't find anybody to do it, and finally in late 1783 they decided, well, we have to hire an engraver and a chief coiner, and they did. Henry Voigt, when he engraved the coins, was not even considered a permanent employee of the mint. He was in a temporary position, and it was only later in 1793 that he was given the position permanently, and he held it until his death in 1813, I think.
Yeah, I just learned this last week, but it turns out in 1791 there was a competition in France to be the engraver at the mint there, and there were like 6 people that made entries, and only one of them won. So, you know, I kind of wonder if Jefferson thought, oh well, there's going to be this, you know, supply of talent that we can get from France, and you know, he did try to employ Droats,
right.
So, but maybe that was some of the thinking there.
Yeah, and he and Washington wrote back and forth about that quite a bit. At one point, Washington responded that he would be very mortified if they couldn't find somebody in Europe that was better than the people we had here, and they couldn't.
Yeah, so they just figured, oh, we'll just import some talent, and that'll take.
Yeah,
it. It's not how it worked out.
Exactly. And Robert Scott, when he became the chief engraver, did not have any experience designing or engraving coins. He was a banknote engraver, and he engraved things in 2 dimensions, but not 3. But he learned on the job, and a couple of years later, he came up with the beautiful drape bust design, which is certainly one of the prettiest designs we've ever had.
And that was very natural. I mean, Nias and Gobrecht, these guys all started as, you know, copper plate engravers, and they evolved from there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question. Is there a portrait of Birch, and what is his biography?
The answer, as far as we know, is that there is no known portrait of Birch. He doesn't even appear in the city directory of Philadelphia at the time. So absolutely nothing is known about Birch including for sure what his first name was, or where he came from, or what else he did. He just sort of came out of the woodwork and designed this coin, and then disappeared back into the woodwork, as far as we can tell.
Yeah, we don't know when he was born, when he died. All we know is that he was associated with these other engravers, I believe from New York. And as I noted, Chris McDowell had found a reference to that.
Right, exactly.
And then there's some payment records within the mint to somebody named Bob Birch, but it's for stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with engraving.
That's correct.
So yeah, he's kind of a cipher. we just don't know. So hopefully there's more information out there. All right. Next.
There may be more information in some place that nobody has found.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of.
So far, we don't know.
Yeah. A lot of undigitized archival material out there. So.
Right.
All right.
Next working on that.
Yeah. I wondered if the bust was actually a turned shoulder. Compare coins of Queen Elizabeth in the 1970s.
Well, I don't think so. If you look at the truncation, you can see that truncation is of a shoulder. It's certainly not the truncation of her back, which it would be if she was turned. No, I think that has to be a very weird upper bust.
Yeah,
and shoulder.
I'm struggling to see a shoulder there.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. Do you think the birch die and half deam dies were made from a hub or engraved directly into the die steel?
Well, certainly it appears that both were engraved directly into die steel. There's well, first of all, the designs were never reused, so there is not a second die of either kind that could be used to show that maybe there was a hub. We know that the birch cent, both varieties were struck from the same die, although the die was changed in between. There is no second die for the half dimes, so I'm pretty sure that these were not made from hubs, although the dime pattern from later in the year was. But I'm pretty sure that these were not. There's certainly no evidence that they were. Let's put it that way.
Well, the size is different, and they didn't have the technology to, replicate.
Oh, sure, they could. Yeah, they could. They could change the size of an image very easily. Artists have done that for 2,000 years or more. You make a grid, and you use that grid to figure out the placement of everything. No, you can. They had the ability to be very precise about making copies of the same drawing in different sizes. That was not a new technology at all. The ancients were able to do that.
Right, but if you had a common hub, that would be producing,
Oh, right. No, these could not possibly have been from the same hub because they're different sizes, right?
Later they were able to increase,
sure,
size of the hub and replicate it, but that wasn't until the 1830s.
Right, right.
All right. Any other questions out there? Just enter them into the chat. Yeah, and I think the idea that the half dime and the birch cent have a common source is pretty well accepted. Too many similarities there.
Right.
Well, it's sort of interesting. One of them faces east, one of them faces west.
Correct. Although, again, you could have been one could have been traced from the back of the page and the other from the front of the page.
Sure.
So it's that doesn't prove any different source for sure.
No, but it is consistent with the idea that in 1792 the mint was just doing all sorts of experimentation.
Oh yeah.
Maybe one of them was, well, let's reverse the image and see if they strike up better.
Entirely possible, yeah. Everything the mint did at that time in 1792 was an experiment. There was there was nobody involved in the mint who had any experience minting coins at that point. Everybody was a rookie.
Yeah.
And according to Boudinot's report to Congress, they even had to make the tools that they used to make the equipment. So they started from nothing. They started from absolutely nothing.
But they're trying absolutely everything. They're, they got different edge devices, different die alignments.
Yep. Yep.
So that's sort of, I think that's sort of Rittenhouse, the scientist, making himself known. Next comment, the Judd-3 was on display at the ANA. Let's see.
Okay.
I think I may have seen that coin.
Personally, I've seen two of the copper Judd cents. I mean, the copper birch cents. I've seen two different ones. Yeah. I don't remember seeing it at the ANA though.
But yeah, the high grade birch cent out of the Parker collection was exhibited quite often after the sale by the winning bidder. All right. Any other questions? Well, I really look forward to seeing your article on this. Do you know where it's going to be published?
Yeah, there will. It's scheduled for next summer in the Numismatist.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly when it's going to come out, but they said it's scheduled for next summer.
Okay. And the other comment was the Judd-3 that was on display was an AU-58. Okay, so that's probably not the coin I was thinking of, because the one on the Partrick, I believe, was Unk. So.
Oh, the Partrick one was gorgeous. It's red and brown Unk. It's the one I showed image of.
Yeah.
And I have seen that coin. I went to lot viewing for the Partrick sale, partly to see that coin. And, and it's spectacular. Yeah. Except for that big dark spot on the back, it's spectacular looking.
Yeah. Those coins were just amazing. I think like about 6 or 7 of the 1782s were, the finest known for the shoot.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's about it for the questions.
Okay.
So thank you very much. This was fascinating. I hope everyone else found it as fascinating as I did.
I hope so too.
But seeing these images just tells us a whole bunch more about that coin that we really did not know before. So.
And that's true, and that's why I'm doing it.
All right.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot. We'll wrap it up, and we do have additional sessions today. So hope to see everybody in one of those. All right. Thanks again, Bill.
Thank you.
Bye.